So Dan, thank you for taking a moment with us today. You're obviously a member of CCNG, as is your organization, SymTrain. You're the CEO. People don't have crystal balls, but boy, it sure looks like you did, because you've sat in on a number of member town halls and you've been hearing for the last year this whole discussion about the shift to work from home. Right. And of course, at first it was, let's position those people there, and they're chomping at the bit to get back. And now, almost a year into it, we realize this is a permanent state. So that has clearly had and will have a continued impact on hiring and training and how people approach that. So you recently did a study, and that produced a white paper that you did with one of the consultants that's also a member at CCNG. But what prompted you to go through this study, and tell us a little bit about the study first?
Yeah, so it was basically a study for folks running contact centers and really running learning and development to see what they're dealing with, right, and with remote work and what impacts that have had on them. And the reason we decided to do it is last year, we all know people were moving from, co-located on-prem to remote execution of the job and work, but then also onboarding that way as well. And so we were hearing some things from our prospects and our customers, just in terms of, what's going well and what they were struggling with. So we wanted to kind of expand that out to a larger audience, and we got just under 100 folks, leaders in the space, respond based on these trends. Transitioning to home employment, logistics, the computer, the technology, the mental health, engagement, and things that had gone well for them. I think the big thing was, most people were so afraid of moving from co-located to home that everything would break, that I think everyone was so happy that, hey, wait, this worked, right? Our people are working, they're productive, they're being effective. And those were all great things last year. And folks, and like you said, on town hall, listening to some of the strategies, people did some amazing stuff to make that happen. And then sharing those best practices were great. So, but then some of the challenges we heard, right, where folks were saying engagement is an area we need to make an impact. First with new hires, right? Because our enroll folks, they know each other, they know of each other. So even though they're not next to each other anymore, but new hires have to feel involved, and they need to, drive engagement there. And then also our resources need to be deployed a little different, right? So, one-on-one's a little bit harder now in a remote environment, and all of our reinforcement with these new hires, it's just more difficult. It's almost like we need more resource, but we're getting less at this point. And then ultimately that job readiness and making sure, in a remote learning environment, that folks were prepared to effectively perform was the other kind of challenge. So
I think one of the surprises for me was hearing how people have a new appetite to increase automation and lean on it a little heavier, given self-service, given you don't want to say the new normal, but this transition into the way the workforce is going to be involved. Clearly, that's going to have an impact on training. Any ahas, any big surprises or gotchas in the study?
This might sound silly, right? But my big surprise, or ours, was 98% of respondents, in order to execute last year, made an investment in technology, right? And it's either e-learning or, some collaboration tool. And knowing how we worked with our customers and what our customers have, we made an assumption that most people had that down pat, especially the e-learning platforms, right? So even though they were training on-prem, their e-learning was pretty tight. And then also even their collaboration tools with some remote trainers and folks, there was a lot of investment in that area. We expected to hear maybe 40 to 50% of the companies, but 98%, I think it goes to the overall conclusion that we made, which was, people were really afraid that this thing wasn't going to work. So they doubled and tripled down on how they deployed the technology, whether it was collaboration software or their e-learning. So even though they might had stuff that worked, they really need to make sure it was going to work in this new environment. And I think that's the big win, right? That, hey, folks were able to perform and do well. And that fear was so great that I think that's why everyone did pretty well.
I know that this technology's been around for a while. And I think the appetite is, as you just said, is increased rapidly now. Tell us a little bit about how this is different than sitting one-on-one. Let's just make the assumption we will no longer have the ability to do one-on-one, sitting down side by side. If this is the new process, how is it different?
Yeah, I think, and when you're saying this technology, you're not talking about collaboration or e-learning. You're talking about like simulation-based training.
Yes.
And automating the performance. Here's the big difference, right? If you think about one-on-one, human to human is great. You never get rid of that, right? Because it's humans learning from humans. It's really important. First is, how do you do your one-on-ones? So are you doing them in, or how you doing your role plays or your exercises, right? Are they actually one-on-ones or are they group sessions, right? And so the first thing you're going to do is save a lot of time, right? By, removing half of the resource, or in some cases, a much larger percentage. So we have folks who are cutting their time on their resource down by half, or even some that are getting 10 or 20x the time return, because they're not doing as many roundtables or as many group sessions and round robins and those exercises that take a while. So that's one. And then the second is who, right? So are you taking your best people, or are you doing peer-to-peer? Right. And so when you think about it, with your best people, you can leave them in role longer, because now you're interacting with software and a computer, and you're also getting consistent feedback. So you don't have to take as much time teaching all your best people how to give feedback and making sure that feedback's consistent. Because sometimes that's a big problem for a new hire. It's like, hey, David told me to do this and Dan told me to do that, but you and me are telling them the same thing. It just doesn't sound the same to them. So the lack of consistency, or the actual drive of consistency with technology, helps a lot, as well as putting your best resources back on the floor, and then also giving the learners an opportunity to run through those exercises so they can build confidence, so they can feel really good about what they're doing.
Consistency is the name of the game, and you get to consistency by repetition. What has been the resistance or obstacle to simulation-based training versus the way we've been doing things?
The way we've been doing things, right? So change is always a hurdle. And really, like I said, you're not going to remove human to human, right? And knowing that people are dynamic, and even the stuff that our employees in the contact center engage in are very dynamic conversations. So oftentimes folks are afraid, hey, how do I recreate those scenarios in a simulated environment, right? And so being able to have branching and dynamic flows is very helpful there. Time to look for that change, right? And there's a tailwind behind this movement, right? So as you said before, we probably saw deeper into the future. The truth is, we just had the problem way sooner than everyone else, maybe because we weren't as good at some of the conventional training methods. So our folks weren't learning fast enough. So we moved to simulation years ago, and then brought it to market because we were having such great results. Change, doing something new. And now that folks are looking for something, how do I perform better? How do I do more repetition with less resource? How do I give people these environments that they can learn comfortably in, and not have that Hawthorne effect of people looking over them and observation, and give them that chance to, what we call, fail fast, but learn faster?
Sure. Hey, last question for you. And I know work from home knows no size, knows no geography, knows no vertical market. If you got 20 agents, you got 20 agents at home. If you got 2,000 agents, you got some mix probably. Is there a point where it really doesn't make sense to get into simulated training because you're too small or you're too large, or some factor in the application of the contact center or what they're trying to support?
Yeah, hard to think too large, right? Because the problems just get bigger and more massive as you add, more people and resource. So the cool part about simulation and automating, these exercises is scale's built right in. But I'll be honest, on the lower side, what could 2 or 3 person training organization accomplish with a 50 to 100 person contact center? When you get underneath those numbers, you really don't need as much simulation, or you don't need tools to kind of scale and automate, because you have a lot more opportunity for the one-to-ones. Even though they're home, what you'll find is maybe it drops from return of at 100 employees or contact center agents down to 50, but really anything less than 50, your team can do that as long as you have a couple of trainers that are focused on helping them, because that's your real team. And then you're onboarding probably another 20 per year max, hopefully, right? And so if you're doing 2 a month, 1 to 2 a month, you have a lot more time for that 1-to-1. But it's when you're getting to 5, 10, 20, and then hundreds a month is when, scale and automation's really, going to be required.
And we're all kind of into Zoom now, right? So I would presume that the difference between having a video interface versus, sitting side by side, using a tool like Zoom or Teams or, whatever, that's only part of the equation.
Yeah, I would say it's half the equation, right? When you say it's part. So with Zoom and those tools, I'm able to convey my training content so I can teach my people what they need to know. But now I got to get to how they need to perform, right? Which is the other half. And that's why having automation with certain tools and giving them the repetition of exercises is going to help people get better. It's going to help them get better faster. So that's the second half, right? Now we got to the knowledge. Now I got to apply that knowledge and perform better in my job.
And that's probably the ROI. I mean, a big part of the ROI, I would assume, performance.
Yeah. Absolutely. Performance is, some of our customers are like, hey, we're able to measure these Kirkpatrick level 3, level 4 models way better with simulation versus observation, right? Because now we see behavioral change. We see the results. We see what we're doing on the floor all the way earlier in the learning and training process. So absolutely, that's a huge part of the ROI, the ultimate outcome of the performance, and then saving resources and saving time.
Well, again, you've educated me. You continue to help our members, and we look forward to continue to do stuff with you and with your team to help educate the members and bring them along and answer questions and be there as a thought leader and a subject matter expert. So thanks for taking time with us today.
Likewise, we learned so much from CCNG members. It's awesome just about the market and the amazing things that they're doing today and continue to do. We love being part of it for that alone. Just learning and getting to network and know people, what they're doing has been huge for us. So thanks, David.